Charles Mackintosh was a draftsman for the architectural firm of Honeyman and Keppie, and in 1895 the city government launched the competition for the design of the new art school, and the task fell into Mackintosh's hands and he won the competition. That Mackintosh actually attended the art school must have played quite a decisive role, I think, in his approach to the design of the new school, because obviously if you are part of an institution, you know how it works and you know what the requirements are really. The studios are all facing north. North, of course, because that's the most stable light, and they're enormous cubicle spaces. My experience of the building really, I must say, stands and falls very much with the tours I guide. Every time I take them through, help me to get a new perspective on it. People point out different things. They give expression to how they view the building. I think one of the most outstanding features is how Mackintosh, or how the school functions in terms of contrasts. Like when you're standing in front of the art school, you're facing this huge staircase, a grand posh ascent towards the building, and it almost sucks you in, it sucks you upstairs to enter. And then you're channeled through this narrow, very narrow entranceway, and then you enter this hall, which again is wide and sort of embraces you. It's a very almost cave-like space. And then you gaze ahead and you see this light-flooded stairwell. And you're sort of directed towards the light, and again, stairwell draws you up again. Now this mechanism whereby the architect really manipulates how you choose to walk through a building, that operates on several occasions throughout the art school. Since all these numbers of people stream through the building, it's wearing the school. It's not only the students who are working in here, but of course the tourists also leave their traces, in a sense that the floors are more and more used, the doors, and people touch things. It has never been turned into a museum yet, and I personally hope it won't.
At the turn of the century, when this building was built, Mackintosh was really involved in a school board building programme. He was part of that programme, and Scotland Street School was one of those schools. What is interesting about the way he handled the brief was that he actually stuck very rigorously to the requirements. He had a very simple, symmetrical plan with classrooms on the other side of a main corridor. He had 2 twin towers to the front. He had 3 entrances. He handled all these elements in a very simple and balanced way. The building picks up on a few aspects of traditional Scottish architecture. The first is the gable recalls the tall, slender nature of a Scottish tower house. The second aspect are the stair towers in the building. They possibly recall Falkland Palace, but instead of stone, he used glass. And the glass is a very modern way of looking at bringing light into the building. What Mackintosh was trying to do was to open up the interior working of the school to the exterior, and that is what turns the building from an ordinary school into something which actually looks to the future and something which is quite different for the time. The irony of this building for Mackintosh was he had no children. But the interesting thing for the observer to the building is there's a delicate use of scale in terms of the floor-to-ceiling heights, the stairs, the detailing of the entrance doors is small and slightly diminutive, almost like coming into a doll's house. Mackintosh had nieces and nephews, and he enjoyed playing games with them, and there's a chance that certain coloured tiles in the building refer to the idea of colour, variation, and the idea of a game. At the end of the 19th century, we were moving from pre-Freudian times into post-Freudian times, and there was an idea that light and new aesthetics were very important in terms of representing a contrast between the old, closed Victorian order and a very open, egalitarian modern view. And that's represented through the stair tower and the light crashing through this crystalline stair tower into the circulation spaces. And you can imagine the children rising up here in the morning to their classrooms. a bit like the way the tree of life is rising in the sculptural form on the rear elevation of the building. What he tries to do, I think, in this period is he's moving. It's a shift over between the organic and fluid forms of his previous buildings into a slightly more angular, pre-cubist approach to how the decoration would be developed in the buildings. So you're looking at a building here which is a kind of fulcrum building for Mackintosh. It's between one style and it's looking towards a future style.
I knew about Mackintosh just very slightly through going to the art school and going to different buildings. And when Henderson the Jewellers opened up here, I used to come in and have a look in the building. And this room was used as a storeroom. No one got to see it. And, you know, there was absolutely gorgeous glass doors approaching, coming into the room. We've got all the lovely glass panelling. And I could visualise us getting the chairs reproduced and it being like a living museum. The tea rooms originated in Glasgow. Stuart Cranston started with a shop in Queen Street. His younger sister, Kate Cranston, then, obviously in competition with him, started up her own tea rooms. Charles Rennie Mackintosh was brought in to help Kate Cranston. They had a partnership throughout the years. And at first it started off with him coming in and maybe doing some furniture, frieze work and some works in the tea room. But when it came to Sauchiehall Street, she gave him the commission of doing everything, the exterior, the interior. This room here is the room, it was called the Room Deluxe, and this was the ladies' room. You paid an extra penny in this room for a cup of tea.
I never wear dark colours, and this place appealed to me because it's so lightly done up. And I like the style of the chairs, although I can't lift them very well, but I like the idea of them because it's his design, Rennie Mackintosh, and he has a special taste of his own.
As soon as you come into it, you sort of, it's breathtaking looking round and seeing all this decor, and it seems to make the coffee taste better. But it is nice, you know, the decor is, I don't think there could be any improvements or anything like that.
His theme was about Alley of the Willows, and Sauchiehall Street means in Gaelic Alley of the Willows, and he incorporated that into, I think, the furniture, into the doors and into different pieces. I think you either love it or you hate it. I love it, and I love to see people coming into the room, visitors that are coming maybe to see the building and maybe not expecting the tea room to be here. It's the joy in their faces when they come in, you know, they see the chairs, they can sit in them. I just love it, and I think it is nice to know that other people can come and actually see the building and use the building.
When I first came into Queen's Cross Church, I was struck by the lightness, the use of colour, the lovely pale pink of the stone and the blue and green of the windows. Such a contrast from some of the dark, intimidating Victorian churches I'd been into before.
My personal response to this building, I suppose, is emotional. It changes dramatically by the changes in our light. In Glasgow, the weather can change 3 times in every day, and because of all the south-facing windows, it responds to the weather.
You could see the sensitivity in his designs, the way he takes nature and sort of simplifies it, and the colours that he uses. Amazing. That purplish bluey color that he uses, it just grabs me, you know, just here.
The people who came here probably lived in large families in crowded tenements. They're probably not treated very well at work, and they come in here, and Mackintosh is saying, well, you're worth the best of everything. You know, this is for you, and he's put so much care and attention into it.
The Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland was all about what was said from the pulpit. It was all about that spoken word, and that being meaningful and affecting people's lives. The commissioning church was called St Matthew's. St Matthew's is the clue to understanding Mackintosh's themes for the symbolism of the building. Everything had meaning. It wasn't purely decorative. So we've got a simple metaphor, and in St Matthew's Gospel, the simplest one is the parable of the sower and the seed. And I believe, because of the clues he gives us where he places birds, that these birds are part of that parable and the essence of listen to what the minister tells you and you're going to be a richer person.
I just feel a lot for the man himself. I think you can feel his presence in all the buildings you go to. He obviously put so much of himself into his work.
Mackintosh was a son of Glasgow, and he was a brilliant son, and his work ought to be kept for Glasgow, for Scotland, for everybody, because it's so extraordinary.
Mackintosh was a young architect in the office of John Hanneman and John Keppie. Hanneman was a profound influence on Mackintosh. I think he realised that Mackintosh was somebody who was special. And if you imagine Glasgow at the turn of the century, really was the architectural avant-garde. This was the edge of architectural and artistic thinking in the world. And I think Mackintosh became absorbed into that kind of thrilling kind of spirit, which I think Hanneman must have imbued. I don't think you come into an office of John Hanneman's and sort of John Hanneman says, stop doing those fancy details. He would say, go for it, really do something special. This is important because we are the avant-garde, we're the edge, we're the future. The building is the Glasgow Herald extension, built in 1894. So it was a very early project in Mackintosh's career. And we can perhaps start to see the initial ideas that he would start to bring into later buildings in his work. Glasgow won the Year of Architecture and Design for 1999. And part of its initial proposal was the idea that within this Glasgow Herald building, a new architecture and design centre could be created. Our involvement came as a result of a competition to extend the use of the building and to bring people up to the upper levels to see the city. The Glasgow Herald building was really like a big multi-storey warehouse, wrapped in a skin of stone symbolic gesture. And actually we found clues within that symbolism as to how we should react today. The first tower, which you can almost see the little kind of petals that just rise above, beside and enclosing an octagon. Now we can almost imagine that, almost like a flower head. Now if you imagine that flower head transformed, perhaps that flower dies, off fall the leaves. And what emerges then is that unusual red brick octagon that you see suddenly becomes and dries in the sun and becomes yellow. And that's the chimney stalk at the back. And what it seemed nice about the second tower is it almost sort of said, this is the seed pod of the future. And so we're imagining that there is a third pod, a third fragment of a flower, a new fragment, which is about the end of the 20th century, which is us, our ideas, overlooking this city and being dispersed. And in a sense, we're using the kind of stepping stone of the last great cultural revival in Glasgow as our stepping stone into our 21st century. And the lighthouse is the symbol of that new century.